Welcome to Learn English with Tech Leads with your hosts, Marcus and Sarah. Deconstructing world-class software architecture and engineering culture so you can master professional tech English. Let's dive in.
You know, you've spent years mastering your tech stack. Your code is flawless. Your architecture diagrams are meticulously documented. But, well, in exactly 5 minutes, you're logging into your very first one-on-one with your new American engineering manager.
Yeah, and suddenly all those technical skills feel entirely secondary. Because, your biggest challenge right now isn't the code.
Right, it's your communication.
It is a terrifying moment for a lot of people. I mean, the structure of a code base makes sense, but navigating a new corporate culture in a second language,
Oh, absolutely.
that is a completely different kind of system architecture.
It really is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We've gathered a stack of sources today, like articles, management research, and notes on cross-cultural leadership to help you, a Latin American tech lead, master this exact situation.
Yes, and our mission today is to help you project your hard-earned technical credibility in English, even if, it's not your native language.
Exactly. And the very first thing our sources highlight is that this initial meeting isn't just a friendly chat, it is something called a calibration meeting.
Right, and we should definitely pause to define that phrase, calibration meeting.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Because if you're an engineer, you probably think of calibration as tuning a sensor or, adjusting a baseline so the data is accurate.
Right.
Well, in American management, a calibration meeting is exactly that, but applied to human behavior.
Okay, so it's like an initial handshake protocol in an API, meaning it is the first exchange of rules before the actual data transfer begins. You are establishing the connection rules.
I love that. That's a perfect way to look at it. The manager is evaluating your baseline skills. They aren't looking at your code. They're measuring how you communicate, how you prioritize tasks, and, well, how you handle ambiguity when things go wrong.
They are calibrating their expectations of you as a leader.
Precisely. And you have maybe 30 minutes to establish those rules?
Which brings us to a massive hurdle. To nail this calibration meeting, we first have to understand why so many highly talented tech leads completely crash and burn, which means to fail spectacularly during this phase.
Yeah, according to our research, because they lack a reliable framework, non-native speakers usually fall into one of two communication extremes.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first trap is what the sources call formal mode.
Ah, yes, we see formal mode all the time.
We really do. When you're speaking a second language and you want to sound professional, the natural instinct is to reach for very stiff, overly polite academic words.
Like, what's an example?
Well, you might start the meeting by saying, I would like to inform you that the engineering team has been diligently working on the database migration.
Right, the grammar is flawless, but it sounds completely unnatural. Our notes point out that this makes you sound like a corporate email from the year 2003, not a modern dynamic tech lead.
Exactly. And in U.S. corporate culture, which highly values a flat hierarchy,
Meaning an organizational structure with very few levels of middle management between staff and executives.
right, exactly. In that kind of culture, that hyper-formal language actually creates a weird distance. It makes you sound subservient, like you're talking to royalty, rather than acting like a strategic partner.
Oh, wow. Yeah. But the second trap is just as dangerous, isn't it?
It is. It's the complete opposite, actually. It's known as literal mode. This happens when you mentally translate from Spanish directly into English in real time.
Oh, man. I have seen incredibly talented engineers sweat through their shirts, which means they get very physically anxious because they are trapped in literal mode.
It's rough. It produces awkward phrasing that leaves the manager totally confused.
Translating in your head like that is like running an emulator, which means running software designed for one system on an entirely different system. It completely drains your processing power.
It really does. It's an enormous cognitive load. Improvising your translation splits your attention.
Right.
One part of your brain is frantically searching for the correct English vocabulary, while the other part is, well, trying to navigate a complex technical discussion.
And as a result, neither task gets enough processing power.
Exactly. You drop packets, you lose your train of thought, and your technical credibility suffers.
So if improvising and translating on the fly drains your processing power, you clearly need a pre-built framework.
Yes, you need a system you can rely on so your brain can focus on the engineering.
So where does that framework actually start?
It starts the moment the meeting begins. Step one of this framework is setting the stage by providing context, not listing your individual achievements.
This is a huge cultural pitfall. I see developers do this constantly.
Oh, all the time.
They log into the Zoom call and immediately start listing every single Jira ticket they closed that week, every bug they squashed, every line of code they reviewed. They are desperately trying to prove they work hard.
And, in many cultures, demonstrating your sheer effort and the long hours you put in is exactly how you prove your value.
Right.
But American engineering managers don't want a grocery list of tasks. They value leverage and impact. They want leaders who understand the whole system before diving into personal tasks.
Okay, so what's the actionable takeaway here? What should our listener actually say when the meeting starts?
You should open with this exact phrasing. I wanted to give you a quick picture of where the team is before we dive in.
I wanted to give you a quick picture. Let's explicitly pause to unpack that phrase, specifically the idiom, the bigger picture, which shows up constantly in our sources.
Yes, let's do that.
We aren't talking about a literal photograph here. When American managers talk about the bigger picture, they mean looking at the overall architecture and the final business goal, rather than just zooming in on small, isolated details.
Exactly. So when you say, I wanted to give you a quick picture, you are signaling that you understand that bigger picture.
You aren't saying, look at how hard I worked.
Right. You're saying, I understand the state of the entire project and how my team fits into it.
That's a subtle shift in phrasing, but the psychological impact is massive. Why is this specific framing so critical for a tech lead?
Because it proves to the manager that you possess a true leadership mindset. You are looking at the entire architecture of the team.
Which establishes trust.
Exactly, because it tells the manager, this person is managing the system, so I don't have to micromanage them.
Okay, so you've successfully opened the meeting. You've established the context.
Yeah.
And the manager is listening.
Yeah.
Now they want the actual technical update.
Yes, the data payload.
Right. How do you deliver that data payload without rambling and getting lost in the weeds? Which means getting overly involved in minor, tedious details.
This is where we introduce the core of the framework. It's called the executive format.
The executive format. Okay.
Yeah. For absolutely any technical topic you bring up, you should use a simple, predictable three-part sequence. Status, blocker, and ask.
Status, blocker, ask. Let's break that down with an example straight from the source material.
Sure. So first, you give the status. You
Yeah.
say, we're on track with the migration. Second, you state the blocker. You say the main challenge right now is the latency in the API responses.
Got it.
And finally, you deliver the ask. You say, I'd like your input on whether we should prioritize fixing that latency or keep our current timeline.
Wow, that is highly compressed and efficient. But before we analyze the psychology of it, let's clarify the tech jargon here.
Good call.
First, the term on track. A lot of English learners might picture a literal train, but in software development, being on track simply means your sprint velocity perfectly matches the expectations on your burn down chart. You're progressing exactly as scheduled.
Precisely. And the second term, a blocker, isn't a physical barricade.
Right.
It's a specific technical or organizational obstacle that stops your progress. You literally cannot ship the feature until this specific item is resolved.
Now, I have to push back on the structure a bit on behalf of our listener.
Okay, go for it.
In many Latin American business cultures, say in Bogota or Mexico City, jumping straight into a rigid status blocker ask format might feel incredibly aggressive.
I can see that, yeah.
Right. Like, if I speak to my manager like that back home, they might think I'm furious with them or that I'm completely lacking in social grace. Isn't this structure a little too direct for a first meeting?
It's a very valid concern, and it highlights a major cultural difference in management styles. But the answer is no, it's not rude.
Really? Not at all?
Not in American corporate culture, no. Because time is considered the most valuable resource. This direct format isn't aggressive. It's actually the implicit, highly desired structure that executives expect.
Why do they prefer such a compressed format?
Because it shows you respect their schedule. It demonstrates that you've done the hard work of synthesizing the information before the meeting even started.
You aren't making the manager dig through a long, winding story to find the problem.
Exactly. You are presenting the diagnosis clearly. In the U.S., being clear and concise is the highest form of professional respect.
I see. So by using status, blocker, ask, you aren't being rude, you're just speaking a different cultural dialect of respect.
That is perfectly put. You are speaking the native language of Silicon Valley management.
All right, so you've delivered your update perfectly, but, well, meetings are dynamic. Even if you nail that update, you aren't out of the woods, which means you aren't clear of danger yet.
Yeah, true.
The manager's going to ask follow-up questions. What happens when they ask about the database structure and you don't quite understand what they're getting at?
That's the scary part.
Right. Maybe they used a weird acronym or their logic just seems flawed. This is where panic usually sets in.
It's a critical moment. When non-native speakers don't understand a question, they often default to a direct mental translation of a Spanish phrase, which usually comes out as, "Can you explain that better to me?"
The sources are very clear on this. You should never, ever say that phrase.
Never.
Why is it so damaging?
Because saying, "Can you explain that better to me?" triggers defensiveness. It implies one of two negative things.
Okay, what are they?
Either it sounds like you're confessing failure, like I'm totally lost and confused, or worse, it sounds like an accusation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like you are telling the manager that they did a terrible job explaining it.
So what's the actionable alternative? How do you ask for clarification without looking lost or insulting your boss?
You use a technique called alignment framing.
Alignment framing.
Yeah. Instead of focusing on your confusion, you focus on the concept of alignment. You say, just to make sure I'm aligned, are you saying we should pause the feature or just deprioritize it?
Let's pause and focus on that phrase for a second. Make sure I'm aligned. It's a massive buzzword in U.S. corporate culture for a reason.
Definitely.
Being aligned means confirming that two complex systems, in this case, two people's understandings, have the exact same state and are moving in the exact same direction.
Yes, you aren't admitting ignorance. You are seeking synchronization.
To put it in technical terms, using alignment framing is exactly like running a checksum verification, which is a process to check a data packet for errors before saving it to a database.
I love that comparison.
Yeah, you aren't saying you don't know what data is. You're just verifying that your packet matches their packet before you commit it to memory.
Exactly. You're validating the data packet. When you say, I want to make sure I'm aligned before I communicate this to the team, you're actually demonstrating extreme responsibility.
That's a great point.
You are protecting your engineers from miscommunication. That subtle shift in vocabulary completely changes how your manager perceives you. You transform from someone who looks confused into a careful, strategic leader.
We are building a really strong toolkit here.
We are.
We have the broader context, we have the status blocker, ask executive format, and we have alignment framing for when things get confusing. But, meetings don't just fade to black, they have to end.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. How do we close the meeting or handle a sudden technical crisis while projecting authority?
Well, the way you close a topic defines your leadership. You must close with ownership, which means taking full responsibility for the outcome.
Okay.
You have to avoid open-ended questions.
Give me an example of the kind of open-ended question that destroys your credibility.
Or a classic mistake is looking at your manager when a problem arises and asking, so what should I do about the deadline?
It sounds helpless, like you're throwing the problem back over the fence.
Exactly. It forces the manager to do the strategic thinking for you, which makes them wonder why they hired a tech lead in the first place.
Right, that makes total sense. So what should you do instead?
Instead, you need to ask for validation of a plan you already created. You say, my plan is to push the deadline to Friday. I wanted to flag it before communicating to stakeholders. Does that work for you?
Wow. The difference in confidence there is staggering. In that second scenario, you analyze the problem, engineered a solution, and you're just executing a quick permission check.
That is what true ownership looks like.
Let's ground this in some real-world scenarios from our source material, because this is where the rubber meets the road, which means this is where the theory is put into actual practice.
Let's do it.
Imagine this. Your 2-week sprint is running slow. Things are breaking. The manager asks you for a progress update. What is the bulletproof response?
Okay, here is the ideal response based on the framework. We're slightly behind on the API layer, about 2 days out.
Okay, status.
Right. Then, the root cause was an undocumented change in the third-party schema that we caught late.
Blocker.
Yep. And finally, we've already re-estimated, and the team is confident we can close by end of sprint without impacting the release.
Let's unpack the psychology of that response, because there is one glaring omission.
There he is.
You didn't apologize. You never said, I'm so sorry we are late.
Right, and you shouldn't. Apologizing for technical realities severely weakens your positioning.
Really?
Yeah, in software development, entropy happens. Dependencies break. Apologizing makes it sound like a moral failure or a personal character flaw.
Instead, you approach it like a scientist. First, you provided a clear diagnosis. We are slightly behind on the API layer. Then, you gave the root cause.
Let's explicitly teach that phrase, root cause.
Yes. For our listeners, a root cause isn't just the surface level symptom, it's the fundamental underlying architectural reason a problem occurred.
Right. So you said an undocumented change in the third-party schema.
And finally, you delivered a re-estimated plan.
By giving the diagnosis, the root cause, and the proposed solution, you turn a failure into an engineering puzzle that you are actively solving.
I love that.
You are bringing a solution to the table while the fire is still burning. When a manager hears that, they immediately think, okay, this person is in total control. I don't need to step in.
And that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? Building enough trust in that calibration meeting so you earn the autonomy to do your best work without someone looking over your shoulder.
Absolutely.
Let's look at one more quick scenario to lock this in. Let's say you hit a severe technical blocker and you need to interrupt your manager to ask for extra resources right away.
Okay.
How do we apply the framework to an emergency interruption?
Well, you start by setting the context quickly. You say, hey, quick heads up on something.
Let's explicitly define that phrase. A heads up is just an informal American business phrase, meaning an advance warning or a short notice.
Exactly. Then you diagnose. You say, we hit a dependency issue with the auth service. It's blocking the mobile team.
Okay, diagnosis complete. Then you immediately pivot to the solution.
Right. You say, I've already talked to the infra team, and the fastest path is spinning up a temporary environment by Thursday.
Notice how you did the legwork, which means doing the difficult preparatory research and coordination before you ever brought the problem to the manager?
Yes, you did the heavy lifting first.
And then you deliver the specific ask, I need your approval to move forward. Can I count on that?
Yes. Diagnosis, proposed solution, specific ask. You aren't saying, we have a massive problem, please save us.
You're saying, here is the exact problem, here is the exact architectural fix I've coordinated, I just need your final sign-off.
It is incredibly empowering when you break it down into these predictable components.
We're coming to the end of our deep dive today, and I want to summarize the core lesson for you, the listener.
It's an important one.
Conquering your first one-on-one with an American engineering manager isn't about having native-level pronunciation. It isn't about memorizing the dictionary.
No, it's not about the language itself at all. It's about projecting a leadership mindset through a reliable, predictable communication framework.
Exactly. It's about establishing context before listing tasks. It's about using the highly compressed status, blocker, ask structure to respect their time.
Right.
It's about seeking alignment instead of confessing confusion. And above all, it's about taking total ownership of the solutions without apologizing for the realities of software development.
If you apply this framework, you will hit the ground running.
And to hit the ground running simply means you will start the new project at full speed and be successful immediately.
It's a game changer for your career.
It really is.
But before we finish, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that builds on everything we've discussed today.
Ooh, let's hear it.
We've spent this entire deep dive talking about how standardizing your verbal communication removes friction with your manager.
Right, it turns a stressful verbal exchange into a clean, efficient protocol.
But think about how this applies to your broader engineering environment.
Okay.
If this clear, structured format works so well in a high-stakes verbal meeting, how could applying this exact same status, blocker, ask framework to your team's written code reviews and pull requests completely transform the engineering culture of your entire department?
Oh, wow.
What if every single pull request your team submitted started with context, status, and blocker?
That's a fantastic insight. It would turn a chaotic, endless Slack channel into a streamlined, high-velocity machine.
It really goes to show that good communication architecture is just as vital as good software architecture.
Communication is the ultimate operating system of any development team. If you optimize it, everything else runs faster.
Beautifully said.
So the next time you log into that calibration meeting, remember that the expectations are high, but the rules of the system are now entirely in your hands. You don't have to guess anymore.
You are ready to execute that API handshake with total confidence.
Thank you for listening to today's deep dive. Keep building, keep leading, and we will catch you in the next one.
That's a wrap. If this breakdown helped, hit subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss a lesson. Keep learning, and we'll see you next time.